Hope you guys are doing well today. So sorry for the delay. Had a little technical difficulties there, but we're all good now. So today the topic is really pain, change, and peace. Really peace, pain, and change. And for me, I don't know about you, but my entire life, I think I've been seeking peace in one form or another. Sometimes I've called it love. Sometimes I've called it happiness. In other cases, I've called it success, even money. But I think the one thing I've been clear about my entire life is that I've been after peace. And the word that I use that's probably most synonymous with peace for me is happiness, right? I think of happiness as a peaceful aliveness or an alive peacefulness. Most of my life, despite how much and how strongly and how assertively I've sought peace, I've had difficulty finding peace and finding happiness. So much so that for a long period of my life, for over 10 years, I was clinically depressed, and so depressed, in fact, that I was suicidal. And I still have the suicide test marks on my wrist, which you probably can't see very well out there in the world. But the point is that, despite seeking peace in such a sort of sort of unintentional way and unwitting way in the beginning, right? In the beginning of our lives, we mostly think it's about achieving things and accomplishing things and acquiring things. And that's mostly and largely the way I spent my life, my early childhood, even my late childhood and early adulthood. But ultimately, I came around to realizing and recognizing that the one thing I was most after was peace, and I think we're all after peace, and particularly in this day and age when things can feel just as uncertain, as unpredictable, and as confusing as they've ever been, and unsettling as they've ever been. I think the one thing we're all clear about, no matter who you are, where you're from, or what it is that you do with your lives, is that you want peace. And it seems that so many things, almost all things, and so many people, and almost all people, get in the way of a lasting, meaningful, and abiding experience of true, deep, authentic peace, again, which I call sometimes happiness. And so today I want to talk a little bit about that and a little bit about how we might find peace, how we might experience and enjoy more peace more often, even when we're in the midst of chaos or confusion, when we're in the midst of conflict with other people, with the world, with bureaucracies, with governments, but also with ourselves, right? There's always a deep conflict, I think, that most of us experience inside. And sometimes psychologists will refer to that as that inner conflict, that turmoil, as cognitive dissonance, right? Or even cognitive overload. But there's a sense that things just aren't okay. And that as much as we may want them to be okay, there's always one more thing or one more person to change or control in order to experience the kind of peace that we want in the world, right? And so there's that one challenge on one hand, which is just experiencing and enjoying the peace that we're all after. But then on the other, there's a different challenge, and that is not just experiencing the peace and enjoying the peace, but also worrying and wondering that if somehow by and through peace, we won't compromise our ability to make real changes in our lives, in our families, in the world, right? And that's always a very unsettling feeling that you can't have it both. And I would argue today and every day that you can have it both, that you can both find and be right inside your being, that you can also find and be right in terms of the action that you take, and also in terms of the outcomes or the results that you get. That when you plant yourself in peace and ground yourself in what I sometimes call God or your inner divinity, you quickly discover that you're inspired from being in spirit, you're inspired to the right action. And it's action that's often a lot more intelligent, a lot wiser, a lot more effective, efficient, efficacious, and even enjoyable than you might otherwise have discovered only through logical or rational thought alone, or only by prioritizing the action only and maybe jumping or putting the cart before the horse, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit today, about how we can do both, how we can find and enjoy and experience the inner peace that's not only within us, but that is us. And then also from that more deeply aligned and harmonious place inside, how we can then find the inspired action so that we can take creative but effective and efficient action in the world that's so much wiser than we're probably accustomed to or used to. So this is a theory I'm going to share here early on. The theory is called the broaden and build hypothesis. It's a theory that was really created or discovered, I suppose, by Barbara Fredrickson. She's a researcher. I went to a program at the University of Pennsylvania on a Master's of Applied Positive Psychology program. That program is all about the science of what makes life worth living. So I don't know about you guys, but again, my entire life, I spent, I'd say that at least 3/4 of it, and not going to reveal how old I am, just a couple years past 21, but most of my life I experienced and I struggled with sort of depression, right? I was deeply depressed and suicidal. And that deep sense of dysphoria and depression often led me to taking action that wasn't effective, it wasn't efficient. And not only was it often not successful in tangible ways and practical ways, but also on the inside, I felt emptier often as a result of taking the action. I don't know how many of us or you out there might feel that way, that there's a sense of learned helplessness that we sometimes develop in the midst of trying to accomplish things or achieve things in our own lives or in the world, right? And so this broaden and build hypothesis really is the discovery, the psychological phenomenon that when you tap into peace, and we'll call it just positive emotion for now, but when you're able to find and dive into the positive emotion inside of you and you're able to cultivate increasing positive emotion, you actually broaden and build psychological resources that allow you to access psychological and emotional capital that you can draw on to be more creative, to be more efficient and more effective and more productive in the world and in your life. So in other words, when you prioritize life enjoyment, and I'm going to explain what that means exactly, but life enjoyment over life achievement, meaning when you root yourself in yourself and you're deeply centered and you're very much clear about being the right thing, you often discover that you do the right thing, and you do the right thing in a spontaneous way, in an organic way, without so much effort, right? So you're able to accomplish bigger, better, more blissful results with less time, energy, and effort than ever before, right? So this broaden and build hypothesis, and to some extent, sort of describes the way in which I think about both enjoying my life and experiencing enjoyment, but also in terms of creating or affecting change in the world, in my world, my personal world, in my social life, in my dating relationship life, in my finances, and on a global scale as well, right? And so we're at this really interesting point in history and in our own lives where we're all being invited to ask ourselves a question, and that is, what is our life for? Right? I think most of us go through our lives and we have some sense of that, and maybe some of us have reflected on that quite a bit. But the one question that has always sort of incessantly been on my mind is, what is my life really for? Like, why am I alive? Like, why was I born with this face, in this body, at this time, on this planet? Right? Why? And not really having found any answers to that, particularly early in my life, I found that extraordinarily frustrating. The one thing I am clear about, I think that we all can agree on, is that no matter what you think or you are up to in this world, no matter what you want to achieve, accomplish, or acquire, you're ultimately, all of us are after a feeling, right? We essentially all want to feel better. And that's why we take the action we do. That's why we try to achieve or accomplish or acquire what we do, is because we think we'll feel better. And the problem is that when we route our peace or our love or our happiness through other people and other things, it's really just an excuse to postpone or to procrastinate with respect to the peace, the love, and the happiness that's always essentially within us and that is us, right? And so to that end, I want to encourage you. And the first point that I really want to make is really one of convincing you that peace not only feels good, right? That happiness not only feels good, that peaceful aliveness not only feels good, right? And that's ultimately what we're all wanting to do and wanting to achieve and experience and enjoy, is a good feeling, a good experience of life itself, right? We all want to experience the subjective well-being. We want to have a great quality of life. That's really about enjoying and experiencing yourself, enjoying experiencing the peace and the happiness and the love that is within you that we're all seeking outside of us, right? So that's the first piece, is that I want to convince you that, it's good to feel good. The second piece that I want to convince you of, or at least talk to you, encourage you to think about, is that when you feel good, you do better. So when you feel better, you do better, right? So we've got a lot of research around that. And I'm going to speak a lot about happiness, but you can just as easily replace the word happiness with peace, because happiness is just peaceful aliveness. So a couple of the things I've discovered over the course of my life and my career. And so I'm summarizing here about $100,000 worth of Ivy League education in about a couple of minutes, okay? And so there's a lot, but just take it in. The first thing I think that I want to share, and that the positive psychology world has shared, is that as much as we want to think and believe that accomplishing, achieving something, acquiring something in the world will lead us to feel happier, it doesn't. We have lots and lots of data, empirical, Ivy League, face valid, time tested data to bear that out. that lo and behold, no matter how much we believe that more money, better relationships, getting married, having kids, a better education, being younger, any of these things leads us to live or enjoy a happier life is completely bunk, right? We know that for certain. We've got thousands of studies that bear that out, that for the most part, as much as we want to believe that marriage will, for instance, lead to a happier or more peaceful life, we know that's not true. We know that you get a small bump in your peaceful aliveness or your happiness as soon as you get married, when you experience that honeymoon phase. But then shortly thereafter, you return to your baseline level of happiness or peaceful aliveness before you got married, right? So happiness is not leading to, successful relationships don't lead to happiness, right? What else? We also sometimes think that money does, and to a certain extent it does, that to the extent that you can make enough money to pay your basic necessities, you live at or above a level of subsistence, which means that you make about $75,000 here in the States, you will find increasing happiness or peace as you make more and more money that gets you closer and closer to that $75,000 mark. But then after that, you begin to experience the diminishing marginal utility of the dollar. That means essentially that with every additional dollar, you make less or enjoy less and less happiness. You get less happiness bang for your buck, right? And so at some point, you actually begin to flatline. In some cases, you even go dip below the happiness level that you had before you started making really great money, right? So money doesn't lead to happiness, or peaceful aliveness doesn't lead to peace. Relationships don't lead to peace, right? Or happiness. Sometimes we think that having kids will, and we of course don't want to upset the parents, but the truth is that we know how hard it is to raise kids, and we know how much we love them and how much stress and anxiety and worry it can be, and how much additional financial responsibility it can be. And so lo and behold, that kids don't, believe it or not, increase your subjective well-being, your experience of happiness or peaceful aliveness. That quite the contrary, the first kid, you get a slight decline in your happiness levels. With the second kid, you get a statistically significant decline in your happiness or peaceful aliveness levels. And as time goes on, your happiness or peace doesn't really return to its baseline level until those kids leave the house, right? And so that's often a little disturbing to parents, but I think most parents who are honest with themselves can agree that kids are a lot more stressed and worried and concerned because they love them so much than they might have expected or been told, right? So kids, no. Marriage, no. Money, not so much, unless you're just not making quite enough to pay the basic necessities, right? Which is a very real concern. What else? Well, sometimes we think education, no correlation there. Most of us think that health, for instance, is associated, let's say, with peace. Okay, that if we can just find a way to be healthier, and particularly this day and age, where we've got a pandemic or a plague, and everyone's so afraid that they might get sick or someone they love might get sick and die, we all certainly feel that health is strongly correlated with peace, right? That when I'm healthy, my chances of being at peace are better. And lo and behold, that's also not the case. That actually there's no correlation between objective health, right, being healthy, and happiness levels or peaceful aliveness, which is another way I would describe it, right? That there's no correlation there, right? But there is a correlation between subjective health, meaning that your perception of health, and how happy or peacefully alive you feel, right? And so that's something to take note of, that it's really most about your perception and really not about the objective health or status of your physical body or being, right? So not health. What else is left, right? Not a whole lot else left. When you break all this down, you find that if we had the perfect life, and this is all science again, if we had the perfect life, only, and that life consists of unlimited money, the best relationships you could possibly imagine, perfect health, perfect body, perfect physical attractiveness, all of that together, perfect circumstances and conditions in your life, only account for 10% of your overall happiness score or rating, right? 10%. So that means that 90% consists of two other things, right? 50% of what's left is really genetics, right? It's DNA. And so we know that DNA, we all come with a genetic predisposition for, let's say, peace. Okay, we can call it happiness, but we come with a genetic predisposition. And interestingly enough, unlike height or eye color or a lot of the other genetic code that is static and that cannot be changed, your genetic set point around happiness can be, around peace can be changed. It's malleable, right? And we know from the world of neuroplasticity that there are ways to self-direct your rewiring of the brain, right? The rewiring of your experience in terms of happiness or self-love or love or peace, right? So we can do those things. So 10%, 50%, right? Perfectly malleable, even though it's sort of genetically, there's a genetic predisposition. The other 40% are voluntary things, right? Those are things that we do every day. Those are thoughts that we think. Those are activities that we participate in. Those are people that we surround ourselves with that actually contribute in a meaningful way to how peaceful we feel or how happy we feel, right? It's basically how alive we feel, right? And so that means that 90% is complete within your control and 10% is a little bit more difficult to control. Now, I would go beyond that, and I'm going to argue something that is even stronger than this. And this is where I would depart from the science, because I think, quite frankly, that the science mostly studies the person, the folks that are average, right? Doesn't really focus or spend a whole lot of time and energy or money on those folks that are outliers. So a Buddha, a Jesus, a Lao Tzu, an Eckhart Tolle, Ramana Maharshi, right? Doesn't spend a whole lot of time studying those folks. And so the argument that I want to make that goes beyond the science is that while most of us feel and think that peace or happiness or love might be either a state of activity, meaning it's something you just need to do more of, right? That if you can just find a way to do more stuff that makes you happy, do more stuff that makes you peaceful, or do more stuff that makes you feel loved or loving, that you'll feel or accomplish this permanent state of love or happiness or peace. And I have to tell you, I haven't experienced that. And yet I would strongly encourage all of us to choose the things and the activities and the people that are increasingly happy. There's something beyond activities that leads to a deeper felt sense of lasting and abiding peace. And that is not what you might expect, which is just a state of mind, right? So peace, often we talk about peace, for instance, as peace being a state of mind, that you can have peace of mind. And certainly it is much happier and healthier and more peaceful to entertain peaceful thoughts. It's much happier to enjoy happier thoughts. And when you are left to your own devices, I would encourage you strongly that when you have the choice to lean into or choose the thoughts that are happier, the thoughts that are more peaceful, the thoughts that are more loving, not just because it's good to feel good, but because there's this entire body of research around positive intelligence that tells us when you lean in to and when you vet thoughts, not for just whether or not they're true, because often the things that are true don't feel controllable, they don't particularly inspire us, and we can't do a whole lot about them. But the thoughts that are supportive, right, the thoughts that are helpful and constructive in you accomplishing what you want to accomplish, you're going to experience not just happier emotions, not just more peaceful and loving ones, but also you're going to experience a lot more success in your life with a lot less time, energy, and effort, right? So certainly we want to lean into more peaceful activities, whatever that might be, spending time in nature, spending time with peaceful people. Yes. And we want to lean into more peaceful thoughts. Yes. No question about that. But peace, I would argue, is not something that is a state of mind. Peace is not a state of mind. Peace is a state of no mind. Okay. So peace, and I think we have all tried to find that lasting, meaningful, abiding experience of peace in our own minds. I have not found it. I don't know about you. I don't know if you found it, but I have not found it. I don't know anyone who's found it in the mind. The most peaceful people I know and the most peaceful beings I know do not look for and find peace of mind. They find peace of no mind. What does that mean? That means that there is something that you are that is aware of the thoughts that you think, that is aware of the activities that you do, that is aware of all the people that you're surrounded by, that is aware of the objects and people and places in the world. It's aware of the objects and people and places in your mind. That awareness that is back of, behind, between, beneath, above, below, and beyond thoughts and thinking, and the mind is itself peace. It's a thoughtless, wordless awareness. It is a perfect or pure presence that is aware of the thinking. It is aware of the mind. It is aware of the body. It is aware of the body's activities. And yet it's not that, right? It's an understanding and awareness that is itself, it is itself peace, right? That is itself happiness. And so that's part of the reason why, for instance, you or I might go into nature, or we might spend time with a little child or a small baby or a pet, and we suddenly feel more peace and we feel stillness and a silence that we otherwise could not find or could not feel no matter what we did in the world, no matter what we accomplished, achieved, or acquired, no matter what thoughts we continue to think. we just never really had that kind of deep felt experience of peace. And so today, the encouragement and the invitation is to begin to dial in to this thoughtless, wordless, faceless, formless, infinite, eternal awareness or consciousness that you are. That awareness and consciousness really is pure presence, is aware of thoughts, but it's not the thinking and thoughts itself, right? And so it's able to be aware of thoughts from a place of perfect sort of non-judgmental awareness, right? As you increasingly abide as that awareness, as that presence, as that consciousness, and as you enjoy that presence and that consciousness and that awareness, you will quickly discover that while you are experiencing thoughts or emotions, you experience them in the same way that you experience the clouds in the sky, that the clouds in the sky exist. We don't fight about the clouds in the sky. We don't let the clouds in the sky obscure our experience of ourselves or experience of the sunshine behind it. Of course, sometimes it veils the sunshine behind it, but those clouds, we don't obsess about, we don't worry about, we don't become compulsive about, right? And we don't fight, we don't defend against, we don't try to explain away or rationalize away. We observe them, right? We even enjoy observing them from a place of non-judgmental awareness. And in time, the clouds always pass, right? Same thing with the storm, right? The storm exists, we watch the storm, and the storm always passes. And so we observe the changing nature of thoughts and things, the changing nature of the clouds from a place of changeless awareness, right? From a place of unchanging consciousness, unchanging awareness, from a place of concept-free, contentless awareness or consciousness, pure presence, right? And so lots of big words, but the idea simply is this, is that if you're inspired truly to be at peace, and if it does require a serious and sincere desire to want peace or to want love or happiness, all synonyms, more than you want anything or anybody in the world. And you have to be sincere about it, right? And just the sincerity alone, just the desire alone will take you all the way home, quite frankly. You don't need me or don't need anybody else. But if you were sincere about it, you would suddenly stop picking up or holding on to thoughts that were not peaceful. You would stop doing anything that was not peaceful, and you would begin to experience and enjoy more of just being, right? So just being, right? Now, this thoughtless, wordless awareness, this contentless or concept-free consciousness that you are, this pure presence or naked being that you are, meaning that you have a mind, but you're not a mind, that you have a body, but you're not it, right? You have these faculties, but you're not it. You are something beyond it, right? You're something that includes it, but it is beyond it, right? So it's like kind of stepping into your car. You get into your car, you drive around, you enjoy the experience of your car. Sure, you don't want it to get a scratch. If you're anything like me, you love your car, you keep it clean, and you just love that car. And that being said, as soon as you step out of the car, you're perfectly crystal clear and aware that you're not your car. You have a car, but you're not it. Same deal, right, with the mind and with the body. And the idea is that when you're aware that you have a mind, but you're not it, you suddenly find that you can use the mind instead of being used by the mind. Most of us experience most of our lives being run and ruined, really, and ruled by the mind and by the thinking mind. And we think that that's us. And if you take a little bit of time and just step back and think about your life and notice the times, the moments when you've been most at peace, when you felt most blissful and excited and happy to be alive, you'll also notice that at the time, for the most part, your mind was very quiet, right? At the heights of bliss, it's very quiet, right? Even in really deep pain, it's really quiet, right? And sometimes you come out of the pain and you feel more blissful than ever because your mind is very quiet. And so the challenge and the opportunity for all of us in this life is to, yes, we want to participate in life. We want to make change and we want to affect change. But I promise with all of my heart, soul, and mind, you can affect much more positive, much more effective, much more efficient, much more efficacious and enjoyable change in your personal life, in your relational life, in your financial life, in the global community by abiding in and as the self. I just call it the self, your true self, your silent, still, spiritual, sacred self that is aware of the world, that is aware of thoughts and feelings, but isn't consumed by them and doesn't identify with every thought and every feeling, but instead simply rest in what we call God. It's called, resting in God is being still and know. That expression, be still and know, be still and know that I am, that presence, right? Know that presence, your own presence, right? Your presence, a divine presence That presence is God's presence. It's source's presence. It's the one presence, the one faceless, formless life that we all share. So how do we go about doing this? Well, very simply, okay? The first thing is to notice and be aware of the fact that before you're aware of anything else in the entire world, meaning the outer world or the inner world here and here, that you're aware of awareness itself. In order to be aware of a thought, you have to first be aware of yourself, right? To be aware of a feeling, you have to first be aware of yourself. To be aware of the computer screen, to be aware of what's going on in the world in terms of protests or plagues or any of these things, you have to first be aware of yourself. Your very existence is actually the very first point of contact that you have with the rest of the world, right? And so that is the fundamental truth. So when someone like Jesus says, you are the way, the truth, and the life, right? What are we referring to? It's that naked awareness of your own existence, okay? Now, at first glance, most of us feel and think that that naked awareness of our own existence is nothing. It's, what is that? How is there peace there? How is there love there? How is there happiness there? But the truth is that naked awareness of your own existence, we might just call it life itself. Your awareness of that is itself the same life, the same infinite intelligence that hangs the earth on nothing. Like, have you ever thought about that for just a moment, that the earth hangs on nothing, right? Like, it hangs in mid-air. Like, I sometimes just sit, and I'd like to say think, but I don't think, because there's no thought. There's just a noticing and an awareness and a wonder and awe that the earth that we all sit on, that we all stand on and lay on and sleep, that earth is hanging in midair. But not just that, it's spinning in midair, right? Rotating on its axis. Not just that, it's in midair, spinning on its axis as it revolves around this super freaking hot sun, right? And that super hot sun, right, and the earth are just far enough apart that the earth and all the living creatures on the earth aren't scorched by it, but also aren't frozen by being too far away from it. Now, that infinite intelligence that has the wherewithal, the intelligence, the wisdom to hang all of us on nothing, rotate us, and revolve us around a super hot star is the sun, at just the right distance to not burn us up, and just the right distance to not freeze us either, is what you essentially are, right? We're all made of really essentially stardust, right? Star stuff, right? That infinite intelligence, that life force, you are sitting on, you are sitting in, you are resting in and relaxing into every single day of your life. In fact, the one thing that is more constant than anything else in the world, that's even more constant than the change that we see everywhere all the time, is this changeless life force, this life energy, this awareness. That, resting in that, relaxing into the true self, without thinking, without letting thoughts get in the way, without creating an eclipse with yourself, right? Where you think yourself out of the happiness and the peace and the love that you are, that you think yourself out of the infinite abundance that you are, that you think yourself out of the infinite intelligence that you are, is what we call surrender. It's also what we call self-inquiry. It's what we call meditation. It's prayer. It's the very core, the very essence of every spiritual teaching. If you dive deep enough, if you really listen to the mystics and you really learn from the mystics and you really spend time in the presence of mystics, some of those mystics often are little pets, right? It might be kids, but you spend your time in the presence of someone or something that's deeply, truly, authentically peaceful. You feel that stillness, that silence, and that infinite intelligence flow through you, and you have creative insights and ideas that you otherwise wouldn't have had. Wise insights, ones that take you from A to Z. Instead of going from A to B to C to D and on down the line, it takes you straight to the answer, right? And so the encouragement I want to offer today is first of all, to seek what you're most wanting directly, instead of routing this thing called peace through so many different avenues, through so many different middlemen and middlewomen, through so many different paths. Go directly to the source for it. You, being the source, one with the source itself, are peace, love, and happiness. You'll know that, not just intellectually, but viscerally, as an experience, as an existential moment in your life, if you can do what I'll follow up here with, which is a couple practices, okay? But the first most important piece, because if you're not convinced that peace matters, if you're not convinced that happiness and love matters, if instead you're convinced that there's something out in the world that you need to achieve first or accomplish first or acquire first, by all means, go achieve that, accomplish that, and acquire that. And I hope, and I would love if you could prove me wrong about this, because I've searched everywhere for the peace that I saw. I saw, searched for it in other people and other things, right? We've all done that. And we all come back to the same exact place, which is ourselves. And we come back to the same exact time, which is right now, right? Which is the only time that we can ever experience and enjoy life, right? There is no future, right? What is the future? It's just simply a projection, right? What is the past? It's simply memory, right? The future is imagination. The past, memory, right? It's history. Only the present moment is real. Only presence itself is real. Only presence itself exists. And so the challenge, the opportunity, of course, is to first be convinced more than anything else in the world that what you really want, no matter what you want, is peace. Okay, call it happiness if you want, but it's an alive peace. It's a peace that parties. It's a silence that sings. It's a stillness that dances, and it's a spaciousness that celebrates. Okay, this is an alive peacefulness, and if it feels like a dead peace, then it's not real peace. If it feels like a boring sort of a peace that's full of boredom, that's not the peace I'm talking about. There's a deeper level there. Okay, and so first of all, that's the first most important priority of all, is that in every moment with everybody, your deepest desire has to be for your own peace and happiness and love. Okay, and knowing that your peace is your gift to the world, your happiness is your gift to the world, your presence is your gift to the world, right? Your presence is the present, right? But particularly if you can lean in to that thoughtless, wordless, perfect peace that is your true presence, right? So that's the first and most important thing, and I cannot overemphasize that enough. If you think that you need to achieve or accomplish anything or acquire anything before, or change anything or control anything before you can dial into the peace that you are, you will be postponing and procrastinating on this peace thing forever, and you'll never really experience it. Okay, as long as it's a thought in your head that somehow the future will offer me a greater opportunity to be at peace than this present moment, then you're always going to find yourself lacking peace. It will be moments of peace or something that feels close to peace, but it won't be real peace, right? So it's like a gap between two wars. I don't call that peace. A gap between two wars is preparation for more war, right? A gap between two periods of loneliness, right? And that's going to be the next talk we have next Friday. But the gap between two periods of loneliness, I don't call that love. That's just preparation for more loneliness, right? A gap between two periods of unhappiness. It's not real happiness, okay? That's a fleeting, ephemeral experience, probably of pleasure, maybe some lust, right? And there's nothing wrong with any of those things, because happiness can include all of that, but happiness does not equal any of that, right? And so first point is, when you say you want to be at peace, really mean it. When you say you want to be happy, really mean it. When you say that you want to feel love, really mean it. Second piece is, go directly to the source for it. Okay, directly to the source. That means yourself. Third piece is remembering that happiness and peace and love, particularly all of them, are not, they're not, it's not a relationship status. It's not a lifestyle status. It's not an emotional state. It's not a state of mind. It is a state of being. It is a state of no mind, right? It is a state of no mind. It's not a thinking state. It's a feeling state. It's something that you can feel into. But even the word feeling I don't like to use, because it sounds like it's almost more superficial than it actually is, right? It's something deeper that's abiding, that underscores or underlies even a tough moment, even a challenging moment, even a sad moment, even physical pain. It's always there in the background, in our opportunities, in our desires to bring it to the foreground, right? And so third piece, and this is the most important piece of all, one simple single practice that you can use that I promise without question will totally transform your entire life. Okay, it's the most transformative practice I ever discovered. And I didn't discover it, but I tweaked it for me. I can't even call it tweaking really, but it's just how I kind of understand it and process it. And so you do the same for yourself. But the most transformative practice I've ever discovered, it's going to sound paltry at first, but I promise, if you do it consistently and you do it for the love of it and you do it just because you enjoy it, it will completely transform your entire life. And things that you can't figure out, you'll suddenly figure out. So you'll come to solutions. You'll find solutions through what I call life enjoyment, or what I call just this peace practice. Okay. But also, if you find that you couldn't find answers to certain problems that you have in your life, instead of them being solved, you'll find they're dissolved. right? What does that mean? That means that they kind of crumble under the weight of their own, of the burden of their own weight, right? That in other words, you suddenly make them irrelevant, right? You don't need to solve it because suddenly you see through it. It's like trying to change the person you think you need to change to be happy. You see through that problem and realize, oh my goodness, that person's being exactly what they need to be so that I can be what I need to be, which is peace and love myself, instead of letting them train me or coach me or encourage me to leave the very source of my peace, love, and happiness to go chase them, to control them or change them or get them to love me, right? And so this practice I'm going to share with you now, it's a simple practice called micro meditations. So there's two levels to it. The first practice of micro meditation is what I call the most elementary level. And by elementary, I mean introductory, very simple. And the idea is this: as often as you can possibly remember, as frequently as you possibly can, take one breath and only one breath with the only solitary single goal of enjoying that breath like it's the last breath you ever take on the planet, right? Because here's the truth. Life is extraordinarily short, and it's extraordinarily long if you're unhappy. No moment is guaranteed. Even this moment right here and now, not guaranteed, right? No moment is guaranteed. At some point soon, we will all be asked, told, forced to let go of everything and everybody we know and love and have worked so hard to know and love. And of all the things that we've worked so hard to achieve, accomplish, and acquire, we'll be asked to let go of it all. That moment could be now, in 10 years, in 100 years. Who knows? But what I do know is this happy life that we're all after is really nothing more than a happy moment, a series of happy moments strung together, right? So a single pearl, for instance, doesn't make an entire pearl necklace, right? Single flower doesn't make an entire garland, right? And a single moment doesn't make an entirely happy moment, a happy life. A single happy moment doesn't make an entirely happy life. But those single happy moments, when strung together, make for a happy life. You cannot have a happy life without single happy moments, right? So it always starts with a single moment. You have no control of the future. You can't touch those future moments. You can only touch and control and enjoy and experience the present one. Okay, that has to really sink in. That's all you ever have control of. And since you have to give away everything else anyway, since everything else is fleeting and ephemeral, every thought you think, every emotion you have, fleeting. Every object you acquire, every accomplishment you have, every achievement, fleeting. It's all fleeting. But there's something behind that, back of that, beneath that, beyond that, above and below that, that is not fleeting, that is eternal and not ephemeral, right? That is not fleeting, but it's forever. That is you. This micro meditation is taking one breath with the only goal of enjoying that breath as deeply as humanly possible and juicing it for every drop of joy you could possibly get out of it, okay? And you do that by not letting your thoughts get in the way. And so if you're really sincere about it and you really want to just enjoy this single moment, this single breath that's entering next to your nose, as deeply as you can, you put as much of your heart and mind and soul into the experience of the breath and not into the story about your life or about the world or even about the breath or even about the present moment. You're not thinking about the moment. You're living and loving the moment. You're enjoying the moment by being fully, deeply into this experience of breathing, of the breath. Now, the key is to take one breath, only one breath at a time. I don't know about you, but I remember, and in fact, I did it at Miami Life Center. It was amazing. First meditation class I took was with Kino, and Kino is a freaking rock star, and she had been meditating for a lot longer than I had ever meditated. I had done things on my own, and I remember taking this class, and I thought I was going to have a panic attack. First time out, I thought I was going to have a panic attack. And I realized very quickly, and she was great about this, and she helped lead me there, that really the challenge and the opportunity is that sometimes we set the bar too high, right? And I wanted to come out of the gate and I wanted to meditate for an hour straight, or I wanted to meditate for 30 minutes. I realized that was too ambitious. And then I realized 5 minutes was too much for me. That even if in 5 minutes, I spent 4 minutes and 59 seconds not wanting to meditate or thinking if I was doing it right and evaluating and then analyzing and then adjusting myself 29 times. And I realized maybe I could do one breath. Maybe I'm just good enough to do one breath. And so I just started practicing with one breath. And then what happens is you can take this one breath as all day long, no matter what else you're doing. Cleaning, you're doing laundry, you're walking somewhere, you take one breath and then you let the breath go, but you do it only for the joy of it. And that's my warning there too, right? Is that if you try to get good at meditating, you try to get good at peace, that's the one thing that will get in the way of you getting good at it. Instead of prioritizing achievement, prioritize enjoyment. We call that blisscipline. I call that blisscipline. It's being disciplined about focusing and prioritizing bliss in every moment as much as humanly possible, right? And so that's what this meditation or micro meditation practice is all about. At some point, once you've been practicing this micro meditation and you've been breathing from the stomach, and that's a key part of it if you're interested and inspired, is that if you find it difficult to enjoy or be in the experience of your breath, of breathing, you can breathe or make an attempt to breathe more and more from the stomach and less from the chest. When you breathe from the chest, you induce what's called a stress response, right? So you get spikes in your cortisol levels, adrenaline levels. That actually makes it much more difficult to relax. It also makes it much more difficult to enjoy yourself, and it makes it much more difficult to come up with creative solutions to any of the problems that you see or feel exist in the world. It makes it impossible nearly to take really wise and effective action, right? And so instead, if you breathe from the stomach, you induce a relaxation response, right? That relaxation response lets you, of course, relax, enjoy the moment more, but also from that place comes creative insights and solutions that bubble to the surface spontaneously and organically without your effort, right? With ease, okay? And so that's the first step and the most important practice. And if there's one thing I would encourage you to do coming out of this little talk, is to practice this micro meditations, do it only for the joy of it, and do it as consistently as you can for the joy of it. Now, there's a deeper level, and this is the more graduate level, and you take this and use this once you've come to a place where you're really enjoying the breath and you feel, you've taken this as far as you can, okay? For most of us, we're going to forget to do this for the first week or 2 weeks or 2 years, okay? I remember actually in the beginning of my practice coaching people about it, and I wouldn't have done it the whole day or maybe the whole week, okay? So have a little compassion with yourself about that. But this next level is really the advanced or graduate level in that, okay? The advanced level is then, instead of focusing on your breath, right, focusing on the feeling of peaceful aliveness that exists already in your body. So if you feel into your hands and you feel into your feet and your legs, you'll notice that there's a life energy, a life force in there already, okay? That life force, that life energy is peace. Doesn't feel like it right away. Doesn't feel like happiness or love right away. It mostly just feels like nothing. It feels like a little tingling sensation. I promise, however, just like stepping into a dark room, it's like when you first start to meditate, you step into a dark room, it seems like there's nothing inside. It seems empty, maybe, okay? And it seems like it's boring. Same deal here, right? But if you stay in the room long enough, or you go back to the room consistently enough, but stay in there long enough, your eyes adjust and you start to see and make out objects in the room. You start to see that this room that felt so empty is actually full. It's full of fulfillment. It's a fulfilled state, right? And same deal here with this micro meditation and with what I'll call practicing the presence. Practicing the presence is feeling into the peaceful aliveness in your body. It's the inner life. So when I talk about life enjoyment, I'm talking about enjoying the life inside of you and making that your priority and that your purpose, and making everything outside of you secondary, right? Making that a less important priority, right? So practicing the presence means feeling into this life force or life energy that's in your body. Sometimes I call it God, okay? I used to struggle with that word God for the longest time until somebody said, why don't you just replace the word God with life? And I thought, and they said, no, just don't overthink it. Just literally life, like the life that's in you, whatever is keeping you alive, that we'll call that God. How about that? And so that works, right? So when you're feeling into this peaceful aliveness in your body, you're literally communing as, abiding as life itself, as God, as divinity, right? That's your oneness with source. You're always that. Your awareness of it lets you feel it, right? That felt oneness with source, with divinity, with infinite intelligence, with the same faceless, formless life that exists underneath or that underlies all life forms. That felt oneness is love, okay? That felt oneness is peace, and it's happiness, okay? So the practice then is to, as often as you can throughout the day, feel into that peaceful aliveness in your body and spend time with that presence the same way that you would spend time with your mother or your father or a close friend or your pet, right? You spend time not to get something from it, not to get something even out of it, but you spend time in that presence simply to enjoy presence itself. When I spend time with my mom, I spend time not to get money from her. I'm not trying to get anything from her. In fact, those things can sometimes get in the way of me enjoying the presence, right? Her presence. And so in the same way that I spend time with my mom from a place of pure enjoyment of her presence, that's the way you want to spend time with your own presence, the presence that you are. Here's what's interesting about it. The more you do it, and the more you do it from an authentic place of just in a selfish place of wanting just to be deeply, truly happy, content, at peace, you suddenly, miraculously and magically discover that whatever your potential was, whatever you were born and meant to do, you suddenly become increasingly clear and aware about what that divine potential is. And then it begins to organically flow from you and through you out into the world without so much effort. Maybe you haven't changed careers. Maybe you haven't done a whole lot of activism, but all of a sudden you're inspired to do something that maybe you weren't before, and it comes without the effort and without the pain and the suffering that you're used to, right? You also discover that for no good reason, people who had no interest maybe in you before are suddenly interested and they're attracted to that energy, right? And they want to collaborate with you. They want to partner with you to accomplish or achieve things in the world, right? And more than that, you also discover there are people in your life that all of a sudden just disappear, right? You don't know why. They're just not around anymore. Or they don't take interest in you anymore. And it can be a little challenging at first because you think, well, am I doing something wrong? But if you're practicing the presence, is you're abiding as this thoughtless world, this peaceful self that you essentially are. And you're doing it from the most authentic place because you know that everything else you spend your very precious life chasing is fleeting. You suddenly discover the power and the presence of God and of divinity itself, of your own self. And from that perfect place of presence, and you're never going to get it perfectly right. That's why we continue to exist in the body, but you don't need to get it right. It's about enjoyment. That's why I continue to insist that it's about enjoyment. You suddenly discover that the way is prepaid before you, right? That things sort of open up in ways that you could never script or plan or plot for. That despite all your worrying and all your hurrying, despite all your rushing and fussing, despite all of your struggling, straining, and strife, you find answers, you achieve things, you accomplish things, you acquire things, you create relationships, you build relationships, you let go of relationships without the pain, without the suffering that you're so accustomed to. Okay, it's a life that suddenly becomes a bliss and a benediction and a beauty and a blessing to live. Okay, and that in of itself is transformative. It's not just transformative for you, it's transformative for the whole world. And suddenly, if you can get that right, if you're being right, you suddenly find that the right action follows from that place, and then the right outcomes come from that place. But none of that's of interest to you as much as simply enjoying yourself, the self, God within, divinity itself, infinite intelligence, the one life we all are, right? And so kind of what I wanted to share with you today is just mostly an invitation. The world is a very crazy, chaotic, and confusing place, I think, for most all of us. Anybody who's sensitive to other people, anybody that has any intelligence at all can notice and look and see that lots of things are happening right now. And the opportunity to experience and to awaken to the truth of who you are is unparalleled in some ways, right? And so let me explain that a little bit. So if you've noticed, when you fall asleep and you dream, and so this is a great, actually, metaphor. When you dream, is there anything more peaceful, first of all, or refreshing than falling asleep and not dreaming, than just having a peaceful night's rest, right? What happens there? No thoughts, perfect peace. You wake up feeling refreshed and revitalized, right? Everyone I know, I don't know anyone who doesn't look forward to getting a great night's rest and to experiencing that dreamless state where you are peace, where you're peace and you're on some level aware of it, not nearly as aware as we might be when we have fully awakened or enlightened or live that peace, right? But we all love that experience, right? Now, the way that suffering and the way that pain works and the way that all of life seems to work, at least according to me, okay, is that it works like a dream. When you fall asleep, okay, your unconsciousness lead you eventually to dream. So we can't, most of us don't have every night that becomes increasingly dreamless, and we can enjoy our dreams. Often those dreams are full of scary stuff, right? Sometimes it's happy stuff and scary stuff and fun stuff and sexy stuff and whatever. We fall into a dream state. So unconsciousness leads us to fall into a dream state where we have to have nightmares. Those nightmares, however, if and when they get bad enough, wake you up from this dream you're having to the reality that you were safe and secure and comfortable in your own bed the entire time. That the food you thought you needed that you couldn't get was never a problem to begin with. It was only a dream state. That the love you were seeking in the dream that you didn't get was only a dream, right? And that the reality was that you were always perfectly safe and secure in your own bed at that particular moment, right? So unconsciousness, falling asleep, leads to nightmares. Those nightmares, when they get bad enough, well, they lead to suffering. And that suffering, when it gets bad enough, wakes you up from the dream, right? Another way of saying it is unconsciousness leads to suffering. Suffering, when it gets bad enough, wakes you up from your unconsciousness, right? And so it solves itself. It's like a candle that burns itself out and leaves no residue behind, right? And so the challenge, the opportunity today is to let this opportunity, let this experience globally, socially, racially, nationally, politically, personally, professionally, financially, let this experience burn you, burn this need, desperation, desire to seek what you are in the world, and instead take more time to practice the presence, rest in the peace that you are, and relax into your true self, which is a non-thinking, it's a thoughtless, wordless, it's an imageless awareness itself. It's the same awareness, okay, that exists when you're so tired at night that you can barely think and you're just so comfortable in your bed. And yes, you feel the comforter and you feel the cool air or the warm air, but there's not enough thinking to disturb or disrupt the perfect peace that you experience in the moment, right? And so that's my invitation to all of us, is to practice the presence. Take care of presence. Presence will take care of you. Take care of presence. Presence will take care of the future. Take care of the present. Take care of presence, more importantly, and you'll quickly discover that the world begins to take care of itself through you, right? So you begin to become sort of presence's pencil. You become God's microphone. You become a channel, a conduit, a hollow bamboo shoot for the infinite intelligence that you are, to finally, in an unobstructed way, shine through into the world, right? So happiness is your gift to the world, peace is your gift to the world, love is your gift to the world, but you can only give that gift if you've discovered it first, right? And so meditation, micro-meditation, practicing the presence, is going within to discover the gift. Love is sharing the gift that you discovered within with the world without, right? So meditation is the gift. Micro-meditation is the gift. Practice the presence of the gift, self-inquiry, prayer, whatever you want to call it, whatever works for you, that gives you a sense of your felt oneness with life, with yourself, with God, with divinity, with blue marbles, whatever you want to call it. That felt experience of oneness is the gift. It is the present. It's presence. And you're sharing it with the world is love. So love is just happiness shared, right? Love is just peace shared. So that's my invitation today. I hope this was helpful in some respects. I want you guys to know how much I appreciate you, how much I send, how much love and light I send to you, to the rest of the world, and how much I want to support you in whatever you're wanting to accomplish or achieve or acquire in the world, knowing that really what we're after is peace. It's peace. It's peace. And peace isn't something that you think. Peace isn't something that you do, although you may be inspired to the right thought, to certain thoughts and certain actions. Peace is something that you are. Okay. And anything that suggests otherwise is just postponement, right? So don't wait, don't procrastinate, live now, love now, be peace now, right? So if you want peace, be peace. If you want love, be love. If you want happiness, be happiness. I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.